It's that time again. It's 2K Kingslayer, and we're back with a different kind of video today. I'm going to be using NBA footage to have an actual NBA discussion today. This is a non-2K video, and this video took a really long time to make, so if you guys appreciate this, please hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. I want to do more of these. I really enjoyed doing it, so again, please show your support for the channel and for me. Thank you very much. So, let's have a chat about DeMarcus Cousins. He's coming off of an Achilles injury. We all know how Achilles injuries have affected players in the past, especially big men.
Memo's down, that ankle turned as he's trying to turn the corner, not good.
A whole city holds its breath as Mehmet Okur is helped off the floor.
Oh my gosh, do you guys remember holding your breaths when Mehmet Okur went down? You remember that? Well, anyway, my point is Achilles injuries affect big men significantly, and DeMarcus Cousins is a big man. He currently weighs in at 6'11", 270 pounds. That's a lot of weight to put on that lower body. And while you wouldn't necessarily call him the most athletic player in the league, he relies a lot on his physicality, bullying smaller players in the post, even though he does shoot threes from time to time. And another one of the advantages that DeMarcus Cousins has over a lot of other big men in the league is that he can actually handle the ball pretty well for a 5. If you've ever seen him in transition, he sometimes does behind the back moves and pretty insane passes to his teammates. He's a fun player to watch when he's not being so frustrating and boogie-ish. So yeah, this is a concern, and if I were other teams, I would be very concerned. Having said all that, DeMarcus Cousins is arguably the best center in the entire league. Unless you consider Anthony Davis as center, depends on who you talk to, but for all intents and purposes, let's say that DeMarcus is the best 5 in the league. Even after an Achilles injury, and even if you're getting him for only half the year, he could really help a lot of playoff teams. I am fully aware that the NBA is going the way of stretch 4s and everybody on the floor has to shoot 3s and be able to handle the ball. But having said that, if you have the best 5 in the league as a free agent and you know you can get him as a discount, why would you not offer him a contract? Even a lowball contract. And that's why it's so staggering that Cousins allegedly told Mark Spears of The Undefeated that he hadn't received any offers as of the Monday morning after free agency began. Now this conflicts with another report that I saw from a Pelicans beat writer, but for the purposes of this video, I'm going to take Boogie at his word for it. Because I think Boogie is desperate just to play, and I know that he's playing for a contract next year. So having said all that, Boogie is going to a team that most people already feel is undefeatable. Now I've heard some people, such as Kevin O'Connor from The Ringer, talk about how Boogie's style doesn't really fit the Warrior style, but honestly dude, who cares? It's the best 5 in the league joining arguably one of the greatest teams in history. This is insane. How did this happen? Well, what I really want to ask today is, whose fault is this? And I want to clarify that when I say fault, I'm not saying why didn't Adam Silver veto this trade, or why is DeMarcus Cousins allowed to take such a small deal or anything like that. I'm not talking about why the league is allowing this to happen. What I'm asking is, who made it okay for great players to join super teams in their prime? You can argue whether that's a good or a bad thing. Ratings actually say that super teams are a good thing. But I'm curious as to how this started exactly. So when we're talking about super teams, you can go as far back as the 1960s, when Wilt Chamberlain joined up with Jerry West and Elgin Baylor. Those names might not mean anything to a lot of people now, but we're talking about some of the greatest NBA players of all time, and some of the forefathers of this game. But having said that, the competition was a lot different back then, the league was a lot different, the rules were a lot different, so let's fast forward a little bit. In the more modern era of NBA basketball, the first super team that I would really consider a super team that I can remember is the Boston Celtics. Kevin Garnett joined up with Ray Allen and Paul Pierce, and that team was unbelievable. Having said that, if you look at their output, they only won 1 championship, and I'm not gloating about that because I'm a Lakers fan, but honestly, they probably could have won a few more. Injuries affected them quite a bit, but part of the reason for that is because these guys were not all in their primes. In fact, most of them were a little bit past their primes. So you could maybe argue that Kevin Garnett was on the tail end of his, but Paul Pierce and Ray Allen were both sort of dwindling down in their careers. I also want to add, and I can't believe I'm defending the Celtics here, but the three of these guys were doing this as sort of a last resort. None of them had ever won a championship before or ever really had the opportunity to win a championship. Kevin Garnett was not going to win a title on the Timberwolves with Al Jefferson. And I respect Al Jefferson and I really like his game. Shout out to him. But yeah, he wasn't winning a title there. And I think that if the three of these guys were in their primes, it actually wouldn't have been as likely that this would have gone down. The reason for that is not because I think the league would have vetoed it or anything like that, but I think the mentality was very different back then. I don't think players were as willing to join up with other guys and sort of take a back seat in order to win a championship. So now, of course, we fast forward to LeBron James and the Miami Heat. For the rest of my days, I will never forget the shock that was beset over me and the rest of the basketball community when Chris Broussard announced that LeBron James was going to join up with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh on the Miami Heat. But looking back at that now, what we know now about the current state of the NBA, that's child's play. Now, yes, LeBron was arguably one of the 2 or 3 best players in the league at that time, along with Tim Duncan and Kobe Bryant, but Dwayne Wade was sort of on the tail end of his prime. He was still an excellent player and a really productive player, which made this kind of mind-blowing, but his body had sort of started falling apart already at that point. As we saw as that super team kind of went on, yeah, Wade was kind of their go-to guy in the fourth quarter, but LeBron had to shoulder a lot of the load there. And then you want to talk about Chris Bosh, who seemed like a superstar in Toronto, but as we saw once he went to the Heat, was he really a superstar? I mean, yeah, he was a really good third option, but superstar? I don't know, looking back at that. At the time, though, this was really a mind-boggling decision that nobody saw coming. And LeBron James took a lot of flack for this, as we know. Some people may have forgotten by now because the media now has a love affair with LeBron James, but at the time, people were not big fans of him. A lot of burnt jerseys, a lot of think pieces about how LeBron is weak, etc., etc. So, in some level, I think who's responsible for this whole Warriors super team in the modern era would probably be LeBron James, but I want to say that that's beside the point. Let's look deeper into this for a second. Psychologically, why do you guys think LeBron James felt he needed to leave Cleveland? I mean, obviously Cleveland wasn't getting it done. But so what, right? He's a superstar. He's gonna keep trying to get one for himself. Why didn't he just wait until his prime was over? Why didn't he quote-unquote do things the right way, as it were? And I'm gonna tell you guys the reason for that team, the reason for the Golden State Warriors, and the reason that the floodgates opened for all of this to happen. And you guys can tell me if you agree or disagree. But in my opinion, the reason that this super team nonsense is happening right now, drumroll please, is the sports media. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, in my opinion, the sports media have essentially created this concept of the super team. Now let me explain what I mean. Anytime you turn on First Take or the halftime show on TNT or virtually just about any program on ESPN these days, and especially about 5 years ago or so, all you would hear about is how LeBron, his greatness is limited because he doesn't have a ring or because he only has one ring and it's all about rings, earn it. And quite honestly, I think those of us with fully functional brains have come to realize that rings mean nothing without context, right? Like, you could be Bill Russell and have 11 rings, but if you won them back in 1959 when you were playing against all 5'4" white people and there were only 8 teams in the league, those don't quite mean as much as, say, 2 or 3 rings nowadays. And I think that players have always wanted to win rings. I'm not saying the desire to win rings is new, but I think that players have gotten so fed up with sports media while simultaneously being sort of brainwashed by sports media to believe that rings are all that matter, that players now are more willing to take shortcuts, either to shut up the Skip Baylesses and Stephen A. Smiths of the world, who just don't seem to get it, or simply because they truly believe that that's all that matters, that it doesn't matter if you go and join a 73 win team, right? Arguably one of the greatest teams of all time. What matters is that you win by any means necessary. And I think a lot of individuals, especially in the older generation, are responsible for this as well. Because if you get into arguments on Twitter with people, especially Kobe Bryant fans, and I just want to say Kobe Bryant is my favorite player of all time, but if you still believe that LeBron James is not a better player than Kobe Bryant ever was because he has less rings, I just don't know what to tell you. You're a part of the problem. You created this. You created this because, again, rings mean nothing without context. But ultimately, the voices of those people have also been influenced by the sports media, right? Whether we realize it or not, a lot of our sports opinions come from ESPN, nowadays from, online sources. And quite honestly, I don't even know if a lot of these sports personalities believe what they're saying. I'm still convinced that Skip Bayless doesn't believe a single word that's coming out of his mouth, and he's just one of the greatest trolls of our generation. But I really do blame Skip Bayless as being one of the people that started this domino effect of LeBron James going to the Heat, and then other players feeling like it's just okay to kind of take shortcuts in getting a championship ring. I blame Shaquille O'Neal for sort of sidestepping every criticism that comes his way by just saying, "Rings earn it." I blame Stephen A. Smith for being a blowhard and just sensationalizing every single news story and saying that LeBron James will never possibly be better than Michael Jordan because Michael Jordan won more times. I'm not even going to get into that. But you guys get the idea. This stuff matters. And it's had real life consequences. And as Kevin Durant has shown us with his Twitter scandal, players do care what people are saying about them, and they do care what the media is saying about them. And if you don't believe that, you are a damn fool. Players care about this stuff. And I want you guys to think about every time that you're going to turn on ESPN and watch First Take or watch one of these blowhards on television, that you're contributing to this. Because they wouldn't be doing it if you weren't watching. Now, ESPN's ratings have been declining. I think there are a lot of different reasons for that, but I think one of the reasons is that NBA fans and just sports fans in general are just getting smarter. They're getting smarter and realizing some of the fallacious and sensationalist arguments that a lot of these talking heads at ESPN are spouting on a regular basis. I think people are getting too smart for First Take and shows like that. And I think that ultimately that has led to a lot of these players not having any more pride and not having any shame about going to team up with their buddies, regardless of how good the team is, or regardless of how good that team has whipped their asses in the past. So that's what I think. Guys, this video actually took a long time for me to make, and I want to make more of them, so please let me know what you think about the topic, and also how you think I can improve, what you thought of the video, what you thought of the format. Leave me a comment below, hit me up on Twitter, at 2KKingslayer, and I'll be back soon. 2KKingslayer, signing off. We out!